President Zelensky has called on Western allies to provide more military equipment to Ukraine.
The town of Wiesbaden in southern Germany, known for spas and hot springs, will now be the headquarters of NATO's efforts to support the Ukrainian military.
Estonia's Prime Minister Kaja Kallas has stepped down as the leader of the Baltic country to become the foreign policy chief of the European Union.
Hungary faces accusations of intimidating civil society as Budapest starts an investigation on Transparency International.
President Zelensky says Ukraine needs at least 25 Patriot air defense systems to fully defend its airspace. In his first news conference since returning from the United States, the Ukrainian president also called on Western partners to send more F-16 warplanes than those already pledged. He claimed a 6-month delay in military assistance from the US meant that Kyiv's forces lost the initiative on the front line. Meanwhile, Zelensky also led a moment of silence for those who died in Ukraine's war with Russia while he attended a prayer event on the day of Ukrainian statehood. The Ukrainian president spoke at the square in front of St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv, where he was joined by heads of Ukrainian churches, religious organizations, various parliamentary representatives and foreign diplomats.
Українці, українки, наша державність – це ваше досягнення усіх, хто заради України б'ється, працює, об'єднує світ, вчиться, поширює правду і готує для Росії відповідальність за все скоєне проти нас. Наша державність – це ви і є.
The national holiday was first introduced in 2021 on the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence and on the baptism day of Kyiv Rus Ukraine, when Christianity was first introduced to the region.
The town of Wiesbaden in southern Germany, known for spas and hot springs, will now be the headquarters of NATO's efforts to support Ukraine's military. The alliance is setting up a command center at a U.S. Army base. It will organize training and equipment donations and be led by a 3-star general. A Ukrainian MP with President Zelensky's party, who is also fighting in the military, says the center is an extremely welcome sign.
We most certainly need those people that have produced those munitions and have utilized those munitions in the past to try and train and teach that to us. But again, I mean, I know various of, for example, my comrades who have received the basic training in different NATO countries, and it has proven invaluable to them.
The center was discussed at last week's NATO summit in Washington. The alliance declared that Ukraine was on an irreversible path to membership. One foreign policy expert cautioned that there could be limits to that statement.
It will hopefully inspire confidence in NATO's support for Ukraine. But at the same time, everyone knows, including Ukrainian politicians, that US domestic politics will decide Ukraine's NATO membership.
During the summit, the U.S. also announced that it will deploy long-range missiles in Germany. Russia says that it will provide a military response to the news. A Green MP, who's a deputy member of the Defense Parliamentary Committee, says that Germany must rearm itself.
This is one of the realities of the 21st century. It's not a very good thing to see, but it's just necessary. It would be much wiser if we would live together in peace on this planet, but this is currently not the case, so we need to prepare.
Ukrainians warn the support from NATO does not decrease their concerns for their country's future.
The reality is, even though we have received all kinds of support, it is certainly not enough as far as battling the war machine that Mr. Putin is bringing together against us.
NATO says the command center in Germany will enhance its support of Ukraine, but not make the alliance a party to the conflict.
Estonia's Prime Minister Kaja Kallas has stepped down as the leader of the Baltic country to become the foreign policy chief of the European Union. The move automatically triggered the resignation of her cabinet. However, it will continue as a caretaker government until a new cabinet is sworn in within the next few months. Climate Minister Kristen Mikel was selected as Prime Minister candidate to replace Kallas. The 46-year-old former Economics and Justice Minister met with the Estonian President for talks.
Me rääkisime koalitsioonikonsultatsioonidest, mis on põhiteemad, ehk see, kuidas majandus kasvama saada, kuidas meie eelarve asjad korda saada, millised on plaanid kaitsevaldkonnas, milliseid lisavajadusi seal vaja võiks olla ja milline üldse Eesti laiem tulevik on.
Kallas is one of the EU's most outspoken critics of Russia since their invasion of Ukraine, acting as a driving force in efforts to punish them with sanctions and send military support to Ukraine.
For the first time in 45 years of European elections, the proportion of women in the European Parliament decreases compared to the previous parliament. Female MEPs in the 10th legislature represent 38.7% of the total, which is 1% less than those elected in 2019. The data analyzed by think tank EU Matrix shows parity is achieved in the Greens EFA group with 50.9% women, while it's around 45% each for Left and for the Liberal Renew group. The percentage decreases drastically in all other groups, with the lowest being 21.7% in the ultra-conservative ECR. The CEO of EU Matrix.eu told Euronews that this is one of the impacts of the shift to the right.
This has to do with a lot of factors, but most of this is because the parties to the right of the political spectrum have gained seats. Traditionally, there is a bigger representation of women in the center and left-wing groups, so it's a more of a sociological phenomenon. It has less to do with, let's say, with participation of women in politics as such.
The average age has only slightly increased from 49.5 to 50 years old, the youngest MEP being Austrian Lena Schilling of 23 years old and the oldest Italian Leoluca Orlando of 76 years old. The MEPs that are under 40 years old make only 20.4% of the overall. Per political group, the highest percentage of young MEPs are in Greens EFA with 41.5%. The lowest percentage, on the other hand, are in EPP of center-right with only 11.1%. The proportion of members over 60 years old is similar, 19.4% of the total, and the highest percentage is in the EPP, with 22.8%.
We have to take into account that also in the last 5 years, the lifespan of the European society has also increased. So in general, young people who want to get involved in politics have to find the fastest way towards the top, and the fastest way is not through the traditional parties, because there are still a lot of personalities in these parties. So if they want to reach the top fast, they have to go through new parties. That's why we're seeing a proliferation of new parties across the continent, because the young people do want to get involved.
Around 54% of the MEPs are newcomers that will have to learn the ins and outs of the legislative machine in Brussels and Strasbourg. Hungary has been accused of trying to intimidate civil society by launching an investigation into Transparency International, the NGO working to end corruption worldwide. A newly formed body by the Hungarian government named the Sovereign Protection Office sent a 6-page letter to the group accusing it of aiming to influence the will of the electorate. Lawyers for Transparency International say the claims are false and are a response to queries it had for Chinese financing of Hungarian transport.
We were expecting, as a member of the civil society group in Hungary, that one or other of our organizations is going to be assessed or investigated. We are now scapegoated and singled out. Definitely, it's a response to our pulling the legs of the Sovereignty Protection Office. We kept on submitting letters to this office, informing the head of the leadership of the office about potential sovereignty implication in Chinese influence in Hungary. China is giving a major state-financed loan to the Hungarian government to finance the Belgrade to Budapest railway, and this is a very obscure investment with no transparency requirements applying.
Budapest denies the sovereignty protection law is about stifling freedom of information and insists that the office is independent of the government and that the law aims to provide clarity on funding for NGOs.
And the legislation creates an office that is independent from the government. So when you referred to investigation or scrutiny initiated by this office, this is not something that is done by the government. This is something that is done by the office, which is institutionally and personally speaking independent from the government. So I would refer these questions to the office.
The European Commission has issued legal proceedings against Hungary for the sovereignty law, saying that it violates a wide range of EU fundamental rights and values. Hungary has until the end of the summer to respond. If it doesn't do so in a satisfactory manner, the EU says it'll have no choice to escalate the situation. Shona Murray, Euronews, Budapest.
Scenes of joy and celebration on the streets of Madrid after Spain beat England 2-1 to win Euro 2024. After a cagey first half, Nico Williams put Spain ahead minutes after the break. But there was tension when Cole Palmer equalised for England mere minutes after coming on for a substitute. The winning goal snuck in 4 minutes from full time, Mikel Oyarzabal slotting home to send fans in the Spanish capital delirious.
Una final muy sufrida, la verdad. Ha costado muchísimo los 90 minutos, pero los jugadores han salido adelante, lo han hecho muy bien. Estamos todos muy orgullosos de ellos. Un partido muy duro, pero merecíamos ganar y aquí estamos, levantando la copa.
Pride and joy were the main emotions on the streets of Madrid as fans celebrated a 4th European Championship title for Spain.